Hello, I'm Ella Watkins. I'm a student at AYLESFORD Pottery in Kent. I did a masterclass of glazing techniques with Alan Paris, a master potter here at the Pottery. So what was the most important tip I took from the whole day? As basic as it seems, is plan really carefully how you're going to glaze your pot. Think about all the different ways you might be able to decorate it and plan it in advance. Get all your glazes ready and really think about it. Good glazing can transform a pretty bad, not very good pot into amazing, stunning design. And yet you can actually ruin a really good pot by not thinking about your glazing and doing it properly. Even as basic as making space on the table so that where you've got your pot in your hand dipped in the glaze and you've got somewhere to put it down that's nice and clean and free from anything else, and how you're going to hold it, what you're going to dip it in with, that all of those things are really important. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is to plan it in advance. So if you want to make your own glazes, the best way to start is to use either a clear transparent glaze or a white matte or gloss glaze and add to it. So buy one already made and add your other glazes and colours to it. Another tip is that get a really good pair of scales, because you're weighing out very fine small amounts of powdered glaze, and you need some really good scales to make sure you get the right quantities in there. So any other advice I'd give, you can always wash it off. If you mess it up and you've got maybe a fingerprint on it or something goes wrong with it, don't think, oh, it'll be all right. Wash it off and start again. It does mean you've got to leave it to dry, probably about 48 hours, but it's much better to do that and end up with a really good pot at the finish. So don't hesitate, wash it off and start again. Another really good tip is also to test your glazes. So make some test pieces, some little tiles or little tombstones that you can put the glaze on, test it out. It's worth the time and effort to go into it to actually make sure that your finished product is what you'd hope it was going to be. So what about wiping the bottom of your pot? A really important part of the whole process, because obviously you don't want it to stick to the bottom of the kiln. However, make sure that you do it very gently and don't apply too much pressure when you're doing that. So nice wet sponge, not too much water on it, and be very, very gentle, otherwise your glaze might crack and then you'll end up with jagged edges around the edge of your glaze. So what about double dipping your pots? It's not always a good idea to double dip your pots into a glaze. They may not mix well together and one may not run very well over the other one. It's always best to test it first if you're going to plan on doing that. Glazes vary considerably and it may not be a good idea to double dip your pots. So why is it important to stir your glaze thoroughly? So glazes are made up of 3 key components and they're ground into a fine powder and mixed together. Some weigh more than others. So if you don't mix them up thoroughly together, you might get one of the key components stuck down the bottom of your glazing pot and not on your pot. So it's really, really important to mix it. Take a lot of time, make sure there's no lumps left in the bottom of the glaze. So like around the edges, sort of make sure that you sort of really stir it thoroughly all the way around. So my question is, tell us about sanding your pots. Well, actually what we would advise is, if you can avoid it, don't sand your pots down. It leaves a residue and a sand on your onto each pot, which actually, if you don't brush it off properly, is going to affect the glazing. It might make it not stick properly to your pot. So best advice is, if you do have to sand it down, wash it afterwards, brush it all off and then wash your pot and give it 48 hours to dry before glazing.